Hey everyone, welcome to the 100th episode of the Tension Podcast. We are a show that acknowledges most of life and faith is lived in the tension between the two extremes. Each week we look at what many of us were taught growing up in evangelical churches. We weigh it against what our current culture is saying, and we try to find what Jesus has for us in the tension between the two. If we haven't met, my name is Jonathan Caron, and we're joined as always by our co-host, Mr. Eric Williams. Eric, go ahead and say hey to the people.
Well, this is really awkward because I thought we were dressing up. So obviously I feel a bit overdressed for the occasion. But maybe it was a prank. Maybe it was you like, hey, it's our 100th episode. Let's like go all out. And then you decide, well, you're just going to wear a t-shirt. Meanwhile, I dressed up. I'm, full tuxedo, ready to go. So at least one of us is excited about the 100th episode.
No joke. I sent Eric the link for the studio, and then I realized I don't have my customary Dr. Pepper that I drink during the episode. So I ran over to the kitchen to grab the Dr. Pepper. And as I'm rounding the corner, Eric had popped on in the studio, and he's wearing his tuxedo t-shirt. And I legit, walking to my computer, started laughing to the point that he could hear me before I entered the room.
That's the goal. That's the goal. If nothing else, that today is going to be a success. So welcome to the 100th episode. If this is your first time, this is us.
If you're listening to the podcast and not watching on YouTube, you don't get to see what Eric is wearing, but you did just get a special little throwback intro to how we used to start the show originally back when we first started as Unlearning Youth Group. So hope you enjoyed that. This is our 100th episode of the podcast. And because I believe we celebrate what the things we celebrate show what we truly value. Today is going to be a celebration of the impact this show has had in the lives of people like you, whoever you are listening. So it'll be a little self-indulgent, yes, but my hope is that it'll be an encouragement to those of you who hear other people talk about their experiences and show you that you're not alone and you're not the only one to experience it. And one fun thing that I decided to do today was I didn't show Eric any of the notes. I didn't show Eric any of the stories you sent in, any of the written stories. We got written, video, and audio stories today, and Eric knows nothing. So we joke about Eric and not reading the notes. This week he could not.
For those of you that sent them to me as well, I did not watch them or listen to them. So that's why I haven't responded to you. So sorry. I'm sure they're going to be great.
Before we get to the stories, I want to celebrate the numbers first. So as of March 20th, when I wrote this episode, this show has had just over 67,000 listens all time. So when you break that down, it's about 670 listens per episode, not counting the 100 or so YouTube views we get each week. So as I was thinking about that, 670 listeners per episode isn't a huge number when you think about the mainstream shows. But what has helped me as I've processed it, because we're not as big as we were back when I was doing all the TikTok stuff. But when I think of the idea of 670 people sitting in a room to listen to us talk about this stuff, it blows my mind. Like 670 people are listening to this on a regular basis on average. And Eric, this is even crazier. There are 13 countries in the world with over 100 listens.
I don't even know if I can. I don't know that I can name 13 countries.
Well, I definitely know you can't name 105 countries, which is 105 countries have listened to at least one episode.
Look at that.
So, Eric, you've spoken in some pretty big rooms in your career.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think and what do you feel when you picture over 600 people sitting down to listen to us, not in the shower, because we know they listen to us in the shower, but if we imagine 600 people in a room, what does that make you feel?
Yeah, it's just awesome. I mean, I think we started this whole thing even when it was talking about Unlearning Youth Group, but there was this sense that like, I think I gravitate to this every single week that we do this because I'm like, am I crazy? Am I alone? Am I the only one that thinks this? Right? Because, we live in this tension. We talk about the tension, but then it feels like I'm the only one that actually feels this. And would it just be easier if I was a hardcore Trump supporter Republican? Well, in some ways, yes. But like, that's how I feel. Or if I just like totally abandoned and decided that I was going to give up my faith and I was going to, go to the extreme. But in reality, it's like, that's not who I am. And so mostly to understand and know that there are other people out there that think and feel and are wrestling with the same things that I'm wrestling with, is really what encourages me, going through the last 4 years, the last 8 years, the current 4 years. So it's mostly like a thank you for helping me realize that my thoughts and my feelings and my opinions, I'm not alone in it.
Yeah, that's the overarching idea for me, is that there may not be a ton of us out there who feel like this, but at least we're not the only ones who are wrestling with this. Like, I know people who used to listen to the show who have now walked away from their faith, and it makes me sad. I know people who we have helped, and we will hear these stories here in a minute, but we have helped keep their faith during all of this garbage. So, yeah, before we get into the stories, I just want to say a thank you to all of you, because I have thought about quitting this show so many times. And like, even as early as Monday, I got a text message from a friend of mine. We're recording this on Friday. It's coming out in 3 days. So a week ago when this comes out, I got a text from a friend asking about something about this show. And at that point in time, we had not had a single story sent in. And I'm like, I'm going to have to come up with something, pull something out of my butt, write an episode and whatever. And in the past few days, we've had quite a few stories, more than I have time to put into this episode. We've had that many stories come in, and it's like, oh, okay. Yeah. Like, I was feeling like maybe this doesn't matter anymore, but then these stories come in. I'm like, okay, it does matter. So I don't know what the future holds for us, but we're going to keep going, even though it's so tempting to just quit and walk away. But it's you all that keep us doing this. So
Yep.
let's get into those stories.
Let's go.
Eric, you've never heard these. Like I said, you've never read these, and
Nope.
I've never used the technology that we record with in the way that I'm using it today. So here's to hoping it works. But here's our first story. It comes from someone you know, Mr. Zeb.
Okay.
Thank you, Jonathan and Eric, for creating Tension Podcast. Me as a believer, I always questioned and wondered where I was with some of my thoughts politically that didn't fit into cultural Christianity. It really helped me think through a lot of the process of my faith. I now have other friends of mine that I'm sending and sharing this podcast with on a regular basis, having conversations about topics about nationalism in the church, how we've politicized the pulpit, as well as ways we can help our neighbor. So I really appreciate what you all are doing. It has been a breath of fresh air.
There we go. Hey, thanks, Zeb. Yeah, I get texts from Zeb every once in a while saying like, "Man, I wish we would have connected more," because he and I went to the same church. So it's like, wish we would have connected more, and we were going to that same campus and talking about some of these things. And the truth is that he was probably already here, and my thoughts and feelings have evolved over time, and unfortunately, it took some some actions, some catalytic actions by certain people that I thought I respected to get me there. But yeah, that's exactly the type of thing that I was hoping for, is that this sparks conversations, but not only that, but like gives people the words and the outside thoughts, or something to point to. Because like, if you're having a disagreement with a true friend over something like faith and politics and Christian nationalism, white evangelical Christian nationalism specifically, it's hard to like just disagree to their faiths. But if you go like, hey, listen to these two guys, that might help, bridge the gap a little bit. So yeah, love that.
I've had someone tell me that they sent our episode on how can a Christian be pro-choice and how can a Christian vote Democrat, that we did about a year ago. They sent that to their dad because dad could not understand how daughter held those beliefs.
Yeah.
And for some reason in their discussions, dad and daughter couldn't get on the same page. And she sent both of those episodes to dad. And while dad doesn't agree, dad at least understands the thought process now and realizes there is a legitimate Christian view of, hey, I have thought about these things. This isn't me just succumbing to culture. We have actually thought about
Right.
and processed and wrestled with these ideas, and we came to a different conclusion. And it's I say it all the time. it's okay to come to a different political conclusion. But to say that those of us on this side of the aisle are unchristian, we're not true believers, whatever, like that's not the case at all. And so hearing those stories of how this show has been able to help others get their point across in a way that they haven't, not just get their point across, but actually helped other people who disagree with us, which I'm fine with, understand the viewpoint better in a world where the Charlie Kirks are misrepresenting us, the Matt Walshes are misrepresenting us, and those voices are so loud that it's hard to break through and give a clear picture of why or how someone could view this the way we do. And so hearing that was a big one for me.
Yeah, I love that concept of like I don't agree, but I understand, or I understand where you're coming from, right? Like I can see your perspective, but I don't agree. That's still okay, because I think, as we've talked through some of these politics and stuff like that, had there been a different candidate in the last election on either side, I might be, talking about things differently, but the core is still the same. Like we've talked about, like we believe in certain core values, and our approach to politics and how to achieve those core Christian values may be different. But like the idea of being able to mend relationships, or at least, because I can see it. I can see where dad is like, oh, my daughter is going to hell, right? Or my daughter is X, Y, or Z. And then when you get a chance to walk through it, I think it's beautiful. I think like my dad.
Or when you hear someone who doesn't have the emotional connection you have,
right?
Because when you hear your kid or you hear someone you have a relationship with say it, it's like, how could you? I can't believe you. But then when you hear someone else that looks like you, thinks like you, or looks like you, talks like you, dresses like you, it's like, oh, okay, this isn't just my daughter. This is like there are other people who are saying this too.
Right. Yep.
All right. Here's our second story. It's from our favorite Australian, Mr. Yuhan in Southwest Sydney. It's a written story, but I'm going to read it to you, Eric. He said, "Hi, fellas. I'm not going to do the accent. I'm not going to do the accent. No, I'm sorry.
Come on. R&R, you're not going to?
R&R.
Sorry, Yuhan, and any other Australian listeners.
They were third on the list of countries.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
He said, "Hi, fellas. Firstly, I tried recording a message, but after 50 or more takes, my voice is just completely wrecked from being so nervous. Dude, don't be nervous." He said, "So I'll stick to the emails, even if it means you missed out on hearing my Southwest Sydney drawl. As an aside, throwing back to your second episode about cursing, yes, can confirm we practically use swearing as punctuation, especially the further you get out from major capital city centers. I've been around since the Unlearning Youth Group days, and over the last 3 years of me deconstructing this podcast has been a part of that journey. I think it was your 2022 political season that first caught my attention because I was really wanting to find other Christian voices who were in the same position as me in regards to the rejection of the culture war embrace of the Western church. The both of you have been such an encouragement on this journey with great, honest conversations on various topics most Christians wouldn't dare touch. And the dynamic between you makes these conversations great to listen to. Jonathan's earnestness to be open and truly honest about topics he struggles with is very appreciated and refreshing. And I also love the chaos that Eric brings with his takes, which are just as insightful. And it always gives me a smile whenever Jonathan finds an opportunity to randomly drop my name during an episode. So congratulations on a massive milestone, and thank you for being such an encouraging voice for those of us who choose to not give up on the church."
Oh, how nice.
Would have been better. Would have been better in his accent, not ours.
That's true. But I just want to bring random chaos to the discussion. That's where I'm at. That's great.
There is an interesting thing that I find with the feedback between you and I, especially where it has gone. Like I've heard this on both sides. Like people like, Eric just seems so mad lately. Like, what's his deal? I'm like, well, yes, if you had been through the things he had been through, you would be mad too. But then I also get the, like, Jonathan's too soft on the church. He needs to go. So it's like the people who are more church hurt appreciate your chaos and your almost vitriol. Whereas the people who are still in the church get annoyed by that.
Right.
At the same time, those people who want to be angry and mad at the church, they get annoyed at my nuance, Whereas the people who are still in the church are appreciative of my nuance and kind of level-headedness. And I think that is the epitome of the tension. Like,
Yep.
I'm going to annoy people because I'm still saying the church, I still have hope in the church. Whereas you're going to annoy people because right now you don't have any trust in the church, but you still have trust in Jesus. And so it's a tension is the right word for where we are in the current climate.
Yep. Yeah. And that's okay. I think that's part of it. You know, I would even say like, this is going to be a blast from the past, but do you remember Hannity and Combs? I mean, I'm not saying that's us, but like, do you remember like when Fox News claimed to be fair and balanced, and they literally they're like Sean Hannity, he's on the right, and whatever Combs' first name is, I don't know. He's like lost. He's like Garfunkel. Like he's nobody cares about Garfunkel anymore. You know, Art Garfunkel knew that. Simon Garfunkel. Anyway, so like, but there was at least like two different voices you could hear going back and forth instead of what you see now on a lot of these. You know, what are we calling them now? Legacy media outlets. Traditional media outlets where it's like they throw in one conservative on the CNN or MSNBC panel, and he's not really a conservative. He's just like a caricature blowhard. He's like a Kevin O'Leary, where he's a caricature blowhard for Trump that they just like throw out there. And same thing on the other side. It was like Fox News. Well, I guess Fox News brings up Pete Buttigieg just a couple of times too. But it's like, I value the fact that we have two different voices. We agree on a lot of things, but they're slightly different perspectives. And, you know, are they maybe like on one or the other side of the middle? Yes, but we're still speaking from the middle. And I think the anger too comes from the fact that, like, I mean, maybe this is going back to my church youth group days, but like, I would always be much harsher and more direct on addressing men and not men, but high school boys, right? And idiot high school boys. It's like, dude, you don't do that. This is not what we do. Like, this is not how men treat women. This is not how men act. Why? Because I'm a man, because I can speak to that side. So in the same way as like, I can speak to evangelical Christians. I can speak to white men. I can speak to white evangelical Christians in the church that go to especially mega churches, because I've been a part of it. I've been in it. And so it's like, that's who I feel like I get a chance to speak to more, rather than going like, hey, progressive liberal Episcopalians, you guys should probably do some things a little different. Because like, I have no concept of what that's like, you know?
And I would say the anger is justified at this point. Like, everyone has different experiences. And like, if I'm not going to put your story on blast here, but if people had experienced the things you'd experienced, there's a good chance they'd be angry too. Like, that's just the way it is. But I think the tension is also balancing the emotions of all of it. And so I love what Yuhan said there, just because, like, thank you for being such an encouraging voice for those of us that choose not to give up on the church. Like, you haven't given up on it, but you don't trust it.
Yep.
Like, that's a valid view. I'm more in the church, and I have more of a positive view, probably because of my stubbornness more than anything, because I think you and I have very similar feelings on a lot of stuff. I'm just so stubborn that I feel like I want the fight, I guess you could say. And you're just in a time where it's like, no, I'm over the fight right now. I'm not going to do it. So
yeah, or
Yuhan,
we fight in different ways. Like, you're like, I want the fight in the church, and I'm like, I want the fight online with people I don't know. Like, bring it. You know, I'm fine with that. Or I'll throw this out. And I like Yuhan bringing that in. Like, I will say this: like, he encourages us by commenting on almost every one of our YouTube posts. So it's like engaging in that way and providing comments and thoughts. And
I know
feelings.
Tuesday or Wednesday, I'm going to log on to that YouTube channel, and there's going to be a comment from him. And on the weeks that it's not there, I get sad. And there was like 2 or 3 weeks in a row where he didn't comment. Me and you were texting each other like, Yuhan, okay? Like,
is there a 911 for Australia? Can we do a wellness check?
999?
It's like, you get nar. Like, it's like all of a sudden they answer and they go, hello, mate. And then you're just like, hey, I want to do a wellness check on I've got his first name, his last name. And I know he's Australian. That's about it. And they'd be like,
I got his Facebook.
No, yeah. Except the thing is, back in Australia, they're probably, oh yeah, we know him, mate. He's just right down the street. You know, like, they'd hop on their kangaroo and go check him out. all of that was very stereotypical, and
I don't apologize.
I do not believe that about Australia. I was
I
just doing
do.
it for comedic effect and the chaos. So thank you again, Yuan.
All right, story number 3. This one comes from Annie. She says, congratulations on 100 episodes with multiple exclamation points right there. Thank you so much for the dedication and care that you've put in these last 100 episodes. Here's just a snippet of the ways your podcast has helped me the last few years. It's a bit long, so take from what you like. And I'm just going to read the whole thing.
Oh, there you go.
I found your podcast through Jonathan's TikToks and started listening when it was still called Unlearning Youth Group. I was immediately comforted by the topics and stories that you shared on your podcast. And when you made the switch to tension, I was even more excited to hear these conversations. I grew up very similar to the listeners and can relate to so many of the stories that you've shared. Listening to your podcast has been one of the biggest blessings of my life. So many of the things you've shared were thoughts and conversations that I'd had, but didn't have an outlet to learn more about. I grew up in a small rural mountain town community in California. I grew up with conservative views and started attending an evangelical youth group in junior high. For years, I really didn't understand how anyone could have issue with the white evangelical approach to faith and politics. Here's the kicker. This will show so much of where our culture is today. Sure. When I moved away to college, I started to realize there were other people who truly loved Jesus and had vastly different views of living out their faith than I did at the time. That really started my initial interest in exploring the tension in life and challenging some of the well-intended but harmful views I grew up believing. Fast forward to COVID, and I was seriously struggling with my church and their stances. Plus, there have been other issues in the church that I could no longer ignore. I made the decision to leave church but keep my faith. During that time, it was really hard to navigate my faith. I loved Jesus and wanted to continue following him, but I was seeing the extremes on both sides. Christians who saw nothing wrong with harmful beliefs and practices, and Christians who chose to completely walk away from Christ. I truly felt like I couldn't find my place for a while. And of course, the past 2 elections. These past 8 years have really shown me how different I view the application of my faith than some of the people around me. I can relate to your stories of struggling to see how people could dehumanize and so actively take away rights and protections from people. It's been really discouraging to see all the awful Facebook posts and comments from people who claim to love Jesus and others. Although my faith journey doesn't only involve politics, that has been a huge part of it. The combination of COVID and the election has left me really struggling with my local church and people who I used to share my faith journey with. Fast forward to me discovering your podcast. I finally felt like I found a place that shared my struggles and desire to continue to follow Jesus. I've been so encouraged by your podcast and the work you put into plan your episodes that are truly relevant to what we need today. I know the path of tension and nuance is not easy or always encouraged by others, but I truly appreciate and see how valuable it is to hold the 2 extremes in our hands and question what Jesus would have us do. It's something I don't see a lot, and it's so important. As I go through my own journey of keeping my faith and figuring out how to live it out in this world, I'm so encouraged by you both and your stories. Thank you for 100 great episodes and the time you've dedicated to sharing such important conversations.
Yep, that's great. Yeah, in fact, this takes me back to a comment that I got last year, which is not positive for the podcast, but I'm going to read it. It says from a guy that he's currently a youth pastor at a church, but I knew him before his pastoral days and into his ministry days. He said, "Hey, my guy, just curious, do you think your podcasts are helping or hurting the church? And how connected are you to the local body of believers in the church today? You have good content. But at the end of the day, if it's all content, no relationship, is it truly helping the capital C church? Or is your audience not for the church, just curious?" And, he was kind of like going back and forth with me on a couple of these things, saying like how much he's seen articles and podcasts slamming the church. And, kind of what you said, that group of people that does not necessarily, they're on the opposite side of my approach. But then to hear a comment from somebody that says, this is helping me continue my relationship with Jesus. It's kind of like, this is really what I'm hoping for. I remember going to Catalyst conference back in like 2005, and Reggie Joyner, he was Andy Stanley's basically his kid's pastor. He's the founder of Orange Conferences, all that kind of stuff. And I remember there being a big question about LGBTQ people or beliefs in the church back then. And he said, "I know the church is going to get it wrong for a long time, but I can't wait to see when the church finally gets it right." And like, he didn't give a side either way, but it's like, oh man, I think I'm in that phase of the church is getting a lot of things wrong here with Christian nationalism and with, the treatment of LGBTQIA rights, all of these things, but I can't wait. Like I'm hopeful. I'm waiting for the church, the voices that we hear in the church, and I'm hoping that we are part of that voice to be able to be like, all right, this is the direction, this is the Overton window shift that needs to happen in order for the church to really have that authority again in culture. And so that holding out for people like that comment, just to say, yeah, we're with you, and keep that faith strong and keep pursuing Jesus, even if the corporate 501c3 church doesn't seem to make that the priority at all times.
Our next story comes from a guy named Matt. I knew Matt at Liberty. And so I just want to give context for this one. Obviously, going to Liberty, you more than likely come from a conservative background. And so just keep that in mind as you read this comment, because I didn't even know Matt listened to our show. I have not talked to Matt, had a deep conversation or like a long conversation with Matt probably since we graduated together. And so we worked together. We went to class together. I had no clue Matt listened to this show. So when I got this email, this is the one that probably blew my mind the most, just because of the background it comes from. And it's someone I've known for 15, 20 years, but didn't realize they were listening to the show. So Matt, first off, thank you for sending it in. I know I emailed you back and told you thank you, but I wanted you to hear it here. But here's his story. He said, this show had an unplanned impact on me. I learned of the show from Jonathan's Facebook. We attended Liberty together and were sport management classes at the same time. I started listening out of curiosity, and I found quickly that the shows would have more impact than simply something to listen to on my drive to work. Your show has challenged me to process why I believe the way I do, especially in the political realm. Honestly, I was very lazy in this area. It was easier for me to move forward with the beliefs I had for years than to do the work and really process why I think the way I do about politics and its role in my life. This led me down a path I didn't expect to go down, and though I still wrestle with some topics in our political climate, I feel stronger in my core beliefs of the role of government in my life as a Christian. I am now trying to take this shift from laziness to my spiritual beliefs. This has been a larger challenge, but staying engaged with your content reminds me how important my spiritual growth is. It is comforting to know that others struggle with not knowing the answers, and that's okay. Thank you for pouring your time and efforts into this endeavor. Your work is making an impact.
That's great.
Can I tell you before you write, can I tell you my favorite part about that?
Yeah.
I have no clue what Matt's politics are now. I have no clue, based on what he said there, what he believes, if he agrees with us, if he disagrees with us. But the fact that our conversations have helped him think through his beliefs from a Christian perspective in a way that he never had before.
Yeah.
To me, that's the goal. I've always said I'm okay if we disagree on the role of government in our life. Like, I'm okay with that disagreement. The fact that our conversations has helped someone think through and process that, and is now shifting from laziness to engagement in both their spiritual beliefs and their application of those beliefs, to me, that's the win. Like, I don't know where he believes, but knowing why you believe what you believe and how that impacts others, that's the win here. Because I think for so many in the evangelical church, we just did what we were taught and we never thought through why.
Yeah. And I think I love that he had the self-awareness to say the laziness in his politics. Because again, we don't know what it is, but it is just easy to listen to, whether it's like illegally coming straight from the pulpit on either side, right? Because it happens. But like, or if it's coming from those quasi-religious people who are really just political talking heads, like a Charlie Kirk or something else like that. It's like, it's easy to just be like, oh, well, I'm going to vote Republican because that's the party of conservative values. And it's like, well, it definitely wasn't in the last election. One could make the argument it wasn't in the last 3 elections. So, like,
there was no candidate from the conservative party the last 3 elections.
No conservative, right? Exactly. So it's like one of those things where, yeah, it's just lazy to check a box. It's also lazy, I would say, like when I was in Northwest Ohio, in that area, no care about immigration or how immigration affected. That's where, it's like, whatever.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Out of sight, out of mind. It's like right now I'm 500 miles from the border, 400 miles from the border, right? It's like, this is a border state. And so immigration definitely affects us. And so how we approach immigration from a Christian standpoint, how we approach immigrants, and then how we address that with our politics matters a lot. And it's like, it's easy for me in my HOA, suburban little neighborhood to be like, I don't care. Yeah. Whatever my talking heads say. But like, to actually get in with people and talk to people who are affected by these policies. I believe that's the Christian thing to do, is to talk to people who are affected by these policies so you can get a perspective like Jesus had, because he actually talked to people who are affected by religious law and persecution.
Well, it goes back to Annie's comment. I thought everyone believed this way. And then I went to college and found other people who had a different beliefs. And I'm like, and that's my story. Like, I went through Liberty, and once I left Liberty and was in ministry in Tennessee, like, Knoxville, Tennessee is a very conservative area.
Sure.
But I was introduced to some black pastors in the area. When the whole Freddie Gray thing went down in Baltimore, a guy who I used to have a very tumultuous relationship with, we had he was a pastor in Baltimore at the time, but we had healed that relationship. And like, I started, and he's super conservative. But watching him pastor through that, because he led an inner city church in Baltimore. And then once I left the church staff and began working with ministries all across the world, because I've had missionaries in different parts of Europe and Africa. I've had a church in Australia. I've worked with somebody in New Zealand and Ireland, and like all these different places. I'm in Germany. I'm seeing how these Christians have different applications of my faith. And it was the exposure to people from other cultures in America and around the world that helped me understand that there was a different way to do this than what I had previously been taught. And like, even just seeing other American Christian churches that are outside the South and how they operate. It's just that was the part that opened the door for me.
Yeah. That's key, is just being able to get around people, different people that are doing things differently, and at least have an open mind. Because there are sometimes, like, there are definitely people that I listen to that are way too progressive Christian for me. And I'm like, I just can't get there. And I know you and I have had that conversation too, where it's like my thoughts and feelings on, Christians who identify as homosexual are different than yours. And I know you're like, I wish I could, but I can't. It's like, that's okay. At least listen, hear it out, and approach it with a spot of going, okay, I don't have to believe what I believe because of this person, right? Or this teaching. Let me literally wrestle with this and get into the tension of it.
All right, we got time for one more story. This one's a long one. It's a video one. It comes from Ray. The funny thing about Ray is Ray grew up in my town. He's 20 years older than me, maybe, but has moved away since. But we share a very similar upbringing, because he grew up in this area and knows exactly where I'm living and the stuff that I'm going through. But he sent a video in. It's a longer one. It's about 4 or 5 minutes long. So, but hits on a couple things that I would love for you all to hear. So here we go.
Hey, Jonathan and Eric. Wanted to give you a brief video and just a shout out to say thank you for you guys' efforts and work, and just kind of what you mean to me and to others as well, I'm sure. Try to keep this brief if I can, but my story is not unique, because I've heard a few other people like me share it. But obviously come from conservative Christian, evangelical, whatever you want to call it, background.
We can tell in your accent, right?
Jonathan, Eric, you guys come from a similar background. But after 2016, I think some of us felt ostracized, or maybe I guess passive aggressive, or maybe even aggressive comments were made towards us. spiritually it hurts, right? I mean, a lot of spiritual damage that was done. Again, I'm not unique or whatever, but, some of us had concerns about, a man that some of us seen as being almost borderline, idolized, someone who is unrepentant,
Not borderline.
deviant, brags about his exploitations in the most vulgar of terms. The conservative church got behind, kind of amazing. And it's one thing, if you guys, I guess, wanted to support that's one thing. But for like missionaries, pastors, other Christian leaders that, I had supported, for years and years, financially and otherwise, just to come out and say, and insinuate that I'm going to hell if I don't support this unrepentant abuser. Or, I'm not being, a good and faithful Christian if I don't support that. Obviously, a lot of spiritual damage. And I could go on and on and on and on about that. But, it can be a lonely place, There's a handful of us out there that have kind of spoken out against this. And, of course, it's not been popular, right? But anyway, just I want to thank you guys. I'm glad, I've stumbled upon your podcast. It's made a huge difference in my life. It made me feel not alone, actually, even though, I'm, hundreds and hundreds of miles from you guys. It kind of bridges that gap, if you will. So, briefly, I did want to share one story. Back in the fall of 2014, I think, one of the, I think maybe it's Lifeway or one of the organizations associated with Southern Baptist came out with this survey, and it said, abortion was not the number one issue anymore with evangelicals. And I think the assumption being that, during the last GOP, administration, abortions had gone up. They had reversed, 35-year trend or whatever. Abortions were up. It just wasn't good for the Republican candidate. And so now it wasn't a big issue anymore. It was for 40 plus years, but now it wasn't. And so, I went on social media, kind of posted my, shock about that, how, people like me have been through, spiritual, anguish over not supporting a certain person. And then now for one of the main reasons that they argued that I should support him, it didn't make a difference to him anymore. And so I kind of shared that on social media. I had a friend from Ohio kind of, spoke positive to me and encouraged me. Not really none of my Christian friends came back and said, Ray, I'm sorry you felt that way or whatever. But the one person that did defend me extensively, was Jonathan. I never met Jonathan in real life, but, through his podcast, we became friends on social media. Anyway, he supported me, and that just meant a lot to me. It means the world to me, and I'll never forget it. And he didn't have to do that. He doesn't know me from Adam. Certainly didn't have to do that, and I appreciate him doing that. But, more important, I just want to say, thank you to both you guys. Your influence will probably not be known this side of heaven, but I think you guys are doing God's work definitely, and appreciate all you do and just your influence and just your podcast. Thank you again, and hopefully you'll keep doing this for years and years to come. Thank you, and God bless.
Look at that! Look at that! Look at you coming in, throwing punches, abortion. And you're like, statistics. You're like, I can already tell. I don't even know. I probably saw the post, but it was like, I can tell you coming in, just start throwing punches. Oh, you know what Obama did? Boom. Oh, hey, guess what? If you really want to lower abortion, you need to increase access to health care for women. Boom. Right? Oh, take that, Fundy. Boom, boom, boom. I love it. I love everything. Ray is one of my favorite follows now on social media because he's posting a lot of very insightful, data-driven, factual pieces that are helping me challenge the, things that kind of like I knew or felt intuitively, but now he's putting like actual spreadsheets to it.
Literal spreadsheets on Facebook,
literal copying screenshots of spreadsheets on Facebook, which for a I guess kind of like a cosplaying data nerd like me. I don't really like to get into it, but I'm like a fan of it, right? So I like seeing that kind of stuff. It's like, what what party has affected the national debt the most? Well, you would think it would be the conservatives, but it's actually not. What party has affected abortion the most? You would think it would be the conservatives, but it's actually not. So it's these things that help us kind of untether ourselves from that traditional mindset of, well, I have to vote this way because of abortion or because of whatever that one issue vote thing that you've fallen into in the last what have we discussed since basically the 70s and 80s. It never was a one issue voting thing. So yeah, having people like Ray speaking in there, and I definitely get it when you feel like you're the only one. And I mean, the further away I get from being attached to my livelihood coming from the church, probably the more I feel solid about this. But man, there is still fear of like, yeah, well, what? I mean, let's be honest. I know who's not hitting like on my posts that are maybe
Well, there's a reason
controversial.
I stopped sharing this show on Facebook as much. I'm just not up for the social media fight anymore. I've been there. I did the TikTok thing for a while, and I don't have it in me to put that. So I'll share it on Threads. I'll share it on Instagram, but I don't share it on Facebook because I don't want those people like. And part of me, I'm like, that's where Matt found it. The story we heard a minute ago, like, and so it's impacted Matt. So part of me is like, maybe I should be sharing it more, but I just don't have the energy to
Sure.
make that fight and to have that. I comment on your fights. I comment on Ray's fights. I just don't have the energy to moderate that anymore. And
Yeah.
so it doesn't feel worth it. And worth it's probably a wrong, because these stories are showing me that maybe it is,
Yeah.
but like there is, I don't have the energy for talking point fights anymore.
Right now. I mean, let's be honest, it's right now because there's plenty of times where I'm like, I just don't have it anymore. But then a big thing will come up, like really, the dismantling or alleged dismantling of the Department of Education and the fact that that might adversely affect the services that a special needs kid like my son gets. It's like, oh, that's big for me. So I need to speak up and I need to be able to speak into these things. So, but yeah, there's other times where I just haven't had it in me, or even when we talked earlier about, I had a hard time sharing our podcast on social media when I was employed by the church because I was afraid how that would make me look or what would come from that. And in the end, it happened anyway. So it's like, man, this is being ostracized from people that you care about or you thought that you were, I guess, aligned with, not necessarily aligned with, but thought that you had some semblance of connection with is very tough. And I think Ray articulated that well. And it is nice to have someone, or it's nice to know that either there are other people out there or there's someone that can speak in and carry the words when you don't have them.
Yeah. And so I think on that note, like this episode for me, and it's been self-indulgent. I acknowledge that, but it has shown me that even when I want to take a break from this, even when I want to kill the show off, like I don't want to say it's too important, but it's very impactful for the people it's impacting. So it's worth it to keep going. And so I want to say thank you to those of you who sent stuff in. And if you didn't get a chance to send it in before this episode, still send it in. I know like our friend Brian, he was going to send something in, stuff happened. He didn't get a chance to. So like, if you're like him and still have something you want to send it in because it's going to help us. And we may not be able to share it on here, but it's those type of things. It's the reviews on Apple Podcasts. It's the comments and the messages that keep us wanting to continue doing this because, like I said in the promo, it's not easy to write these. It's not easy to figure out how to say it and actually live in the tension. But seeing the impact it's had helps bring the energy to keep it going.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, and I think we've intentionally kept this podcast, there's always the ask of like, well, what if you bring on somebody else and have we've intentionally kept this format this way, but I think where we get feedback from other people and other perspectives is when you write in, whether it's stories or questions or whatever you have. That is great for us to be able to say, oh, this is a perspective we haven't thought about, and now let's process through it. So,
Yeah.
so
Have you thought about doing
to,
an episode on this? No, I
right?
haven't,
Yeah,
but thank you. Let me think through it. So yeah, any ideas? Like, we don't know what next season is going to look like. We don't know when next season is going to be. And
sure.
So if you have ideas, if you have thoughts of things we need to talk about, then send them in. Like, we would love to hear those as we plan. I'm going to get to the close here in a second, but a little short promo. If you want to hear Eric talk about special needs things on April 2nd, you can have a Jonathan and Eric show in a different format, because the Healthy Sports Parents podcast has an episode coming out with Eric on there for Autism Awareness Day. So he's on that. So if you want to hear more of us in a different format, you can do that. But that's it for this episode. My dog is currently at my feet trying to bite my hands because he's tired of being put up and wants to play. So we're going to have to get out of here. But we don't know when the next full season will be. It'll come later this year, probably sometime, we think, but not sure when. The plan is to do some bonus episodes, though. Whether those are monthly or bi-monthly, I don't know yet. We're going to get some out. We're going to take a break from this season and then figure out what we want to do. But if you have any questions or comments, or you want to keep up with us during the breaks, feel free to reach out on social or send us an email to continue these conversations. Eric is at EricW712 on all the platforms. I am at Jonathan_Caron on them as well. You can email us hello@tensionpodcast.com. If you like the show, please rate it and review us wherever you listen. I mentioned those podcast reviews on Apple Podcasts. Those are little lifelines of energy. So anytime you can put those in, we greatly appreciate it. Eric, before we get out of here, anything you want to say on
No,
the
hey,
100th episode?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say no, but yes, it's I continue this because this is good for my mental health. Talking to Jonathan has been something that keeps me going, and then knowing that our little conversations and my occasional rants and chaotic outbursts has some value for other people, I think is just even better. So for all of you struggling through this, just know that you're not struggling alone, and know that that there's a light at the end of whatever tunnel we are going through, and I'm excited to find that together.
That's it for this week. That's it for this season. Thanks for making us a part of your day for the last 100 episodes. We will talk to you again soon. We don't know when. It will be soon, though. We hope you have a great week. Thanks again, everybody.